Hey guys, how's it going? It's me, Yoko from Japan. Welcome back to my channel. Today guys, actually I'm starting this video with half battery charged and I have another one charging right now because I forgot to get prepared. Oh my gosh, but I prepared all my scripts today. You know, a little notes here, but like, well, how many pages is this? 7 pages. Anyway, for those who are new here, I am Yoko. I'm Japanese. I was born and raised here in Japan and I've lived all my life here in my mother country, and I'm also a huge Trump supporter. As a Trump supporter, today I would like to talk about the transparency of the media. Why? Well, because the mainstream media always demands transparency to the political side, and being involved in political field, I'm like, I want transparency from you media people, so that's what it's gonna be about today. I would like to share my thoughts with American people because the mainstream media here in Japan actually only copies the information that the American media is reporting. I think it has a lot to do with their budget and so on, and also it's just a historical flow. Our mainstream media is pretty left, so I guess that the media here don't have problems to begin with, but what happens is that they just get information from the media in the US, and if the information that the American media is reporting is biased, then we get biased information believing that it's neutral and so on, and with that information we actually make wrong political decisions, and that leads to chaos, and that's something that I want to avoid, and therefore I would like to share my thoughts with you. So when I think about the transparency of the media, I can think of two kinds of transparency. The first one is the transparency of the information source, and the second thing is the transparency of the media body, which I will explain in a minute, but let's start with the first one. The source transparency, that's the lesson that we all need to learn from this Russian collusion conspiracy. Here in Japan, I have media people friends, and also I have politician friends, like national level, local level, like all kinds of levels. I'm in a unique position, okay? Because I'm involved in political situations here, I understand that sometimes we cannot share the source. Sometimes it can be like a leak information that the source person can only cooperate if their privacy is protected, right? And other times it has something to do with national security and so on. And there are all kinds of conditions, and sometimes we cannot actually share where the information is coming from. But as for this Russian collusion, now I look back and think to myself, like, what evidence were they talking about? The mainstream media kept saying that there is evidence, or they will feature people that will say that there is evidence that is coming, right? Now we know that there was no such thing. So what were they talking about? And to bring it to a bigger scale, who was directing such conspiracy theory? Who was sponsoring such things? Who was actually responsible? I am dying to know all of those. Things like this. It's the top people that, you know, release information, and the end people such as like news anchors and so on, they just read the scripts and so on, right? So oftentimes even they are deceived, and usually when the media makes some kind of mistake, like, you know, telop mistake, you call it telop, right? Like the subtitle is like letters on the screen. If the telop is wrong, if there's a mistake in the written words on the screen, or if it's not matching the footage and so on, and they apologize later, right? Oh, sorry, that was a mistake, like, oh, it was wrong. When that happens, they apologize, right? They correct the information. It happens all the time because media people are humans. They make mistakes like we do, and they apologize. But as for this collusion, I'm not seeing any apologies, and if their information source was wrong, then they should expose that. Being from Japan, I actually want to introduce this interesting example for you guys regarding like fake news. So I'm a Japanese patriot. I am very proud to be Japanese. I believe that the majority or the average of Japanese people are pretty smart and so on, but I must admit that there are idiots here as well, especially the young people, right? Because they are growing up, they're still kids. So, and this 20 years old kid in Japan decided to tweet something fake right after the disaster in Kumamoto prefecture in 2016. The earthquake in 2016 in Kumamoto, it was huge. right? Our castle was even damaged and all the houses were torn down and so on, and the damage was massive. The aftermath was just horrible, right? And during the time, this 20-year-old kid decided to tweet something fake. He tweeted and said, a lion from the zoo escaped to the city due to the disaster. And it was actually the scene of a movie filmed in South Africa. And people were like, oh my gosh! You know, the earthquakes here in Japan, we are traumatized. Really huge earthquakes happen every now and then. We are in this like emotional state and we can't make right judgments, okay? And in that state, we saw that information and a bunch of people retweeted and said like, oh my gosh, there's a lion escaping. People need to be notified, and with the good intent, people kept retweeting, and I don't know how soon it was, but at one point it got retweeted over 20,000 times. At the same time, the zoo that he mentioned was real, right? Like, of course, that's why people bought the lie. And there were some smart people, like down-to-earth people, who actually called the zoo. They asked the zoo if any lion escaped from there, and they said no. But guess how many phone calls they got? 100. Maybe you think it's not a big deal, but for a zoo, it's a big deal. It's not like America, like it's Japan, like the ratio is different. So this fake news, it not only affected people's mind, but it also affected the zoo. For that, he actually got arrested after 3 months. And I hear the siren outside. Good timing. And actually, it was the first time in Japan that somebody was arrested for fake news, like releasing fake information online. And I don't know about America, you know, are there any case like that? Because I'm curious, but that happened here in Japan and people are cautious afterwards. So it's a Japanese case, so I don't know if it can be applied to your country, but my point here is that citizens here can get arrested for reporting wrong information. But what about the mainstream media when they report false information, especially on purpose? That to me is like fraud. It's interesting that we don't have any charge for misguiding or misinformation and so on, especially if that's the product of your business. Like, for example, politicians, doctors, business people, cops, military servants, any workers, if they fake something at workplace, they're gonna be in trouble. They will get fired or they get arrested. They have to face all the consequences, right? But what about the media? I wouldn't say that they have to get arrested because the borderline is very vague, because it can be like freedom of speech and so on, but at least they could apologize, right? People at other kinds of workplace do, and they just get away with everything, and that's just not fair in my opinion. To me, it's like their privilege, right? That they don't have to even apologize for their mistake or intentional mistake. There's no equality, and I'm curious to know what you guys think about that. And the second thing that I want to think about is the transparency of the body of the media. And what do I mean by that? I'll first talk about how vulnerable the citizens are. As I said in the beginning, now the mainstream media is saying that they demand transparency from the political side. But it's natural to think that we want transparency from everybody, right? Because the individuals, the citizens, are very transparent and vulnerable, while the media people are hiding behind the shield of their brand name, you know what I mean? There's a reason why silent majority is silent. Why? Because the silence protects them, because they are very vulnerable. I remember, guys, when I started to show my support for Mr. Trump during the presidential race, some of you actually contacted me and said that you want to talk about the stuff that I'm talking about. You want to state your political opinions and so on, but you can't because you will be danger. You can't because you will lose your job. You can't because you will lose your friends and that sort of things. And that just shows how vulnerable you are. Even though you have all these opinions and all these wishes, you can't even say it because that's how vulnerable you are. And vulnerable is something we all are, but media people are protected by their brand name. That's their shield, but you've got nothing, and that is the problem. Even though they are protected, you can kind of see the face of the mainstream media, which is their anchors or reporters. They show their face and names, you just see them, right, on the screen and so on. But it's just their face, you know? Like, have you ever thought about it? The anchors, the reporters, they are only the face of the media. But in fact, media has a body, you know? By body, I mean like the team that's creating the publication, such as the director, producer, editor, camera, sound, art, makeup, whatsoever. I don't even know what they consist of. See? And on the top of that, each program, I believe, maybe as a company, I'm not too sure, but they have sponsors and all the people that are helping, oh yeah, like advisors and everything. So that's what I call the body of the media, which we never see. It's like unseen and not exposed, and it's not transparent. It's protected by the brand's name, or like it blinds us and we can't see who they are. But because we see the names of the media, we believe that we know them. But in fact, we don't even know these people. We never see them. There's no transparency, and that's just crazy to me when I think about it. The mainstream media has this shield of their brand name, and we just look at the name and instantly have some kind of impression, or some people even have trust in them even though they don't know who they are. Like, for example, politicians have all their information out in the public, right? At least in Japan, that's how it is. They expose almost everything to the public so that they can earn trust. But the mainstream media, they tell you nothing. They don't need any transparency because they know that people just trust them by their brand name. Even though the media is like a vessel and people changes all the time, you know, inside of the company, people changes the roles, or people themselves, some people quit, other people come in, and also the connections that they have in and outside of the company, it changes. So it's like a vessel or a box filled with things, and we don't know what it contains, but because of what it says on the outside, what it is, we just assume things. Some people trust and listen to their narrative even though they don't understand what it is. So with that in mind, I'm thinking to myself that there's the transparency that we should all demand. I know that this kind of discussions are not as appealing to certain people because people just generally love dramatic things, right? Bashing and conflicts and all sorts of negative things. But discussions like this about how we could change our society is something that we really need to think about, especially because the technology has started to change our lives very massively. The generation that we are in right now, our life is really changing right now. We have easy access to the internet, and surveillance system is getting better, especially in China, and spies everywhere. And also we have smartphones and computers and all these convenient devices, especially in developed countries. And today it is the 21st century. Things are just changing. Our circumstances are changing. However, the premise of our society, it remains the same from ages ago. And that's just crazy. I think that we need to get used to thinking about this, you know, that each individual today uploads information to the internet. We upload information all the time, whether it's about you or your family or the workplace. Like, you give lots and lots of information, and we are responsible for that sort of information that we actually give. And we have access to lots of different platforms such as social media and so on. And that's just a part of the 21st century, I know. But even just thinking about that side alone, it makes you realize that we are not in the mass media generation anymore. So then, why are we still living in the same system? That's a question that I have for you today. Why are we trying to live like people did in the past, like ages ago? Back in the day, I believe that the mainstream media was a tool, like not in an insulting way, but a tool of politicians and so on who have power that wanted to run their propaganda. Today though, the mainstream media is still a tool. Because what they report saying that it's information is actually propaganda. Right? Today it's a little tricky because it's Trump administration in the US and Abe administration in Japan. It looks as if they were opposing to the governing power, right? But it does not mean they are against power in general. They're just pick and choosing their favorite power to side with. The point that I'm bringing up here is that we need to forget about the myth of being neutral. In order to be cool, or in order to be right, or in order to be not hated by people really like to stand on the neutral point. For some reason, people want to be neutral. But look at me, for example. I look at the US from outside. I'm the third party regarding the US, right? But if you look at the larger scale, in my mind, I'm only thinking about showing my love for the US. I just want to be the bridge between Japan and the US. I just want to focus on this connection that we have here. However, though, when people from other countries look at what I'm doing, especially the enemies of the US see what I'm doing, because I'm siding with the US, I'm instantly their enemy. Because I'm their enemy's friend, meaning that I'm on the enemy side and I become their enemy even though there's nothing here. And that is called political dynamics. And people don't think about it much, even though I really want them to. In order for you to stand on your position, you actually have to give sacrifice. Like, you will always have enemies. You will be hated by somebody. It's like the mainstream people type. I would say that they pretend to be in the third party, but they are actually involved. Just think about why there are social justice warriors from the left side. They want to feel like heroes, like good people and so on. But in reality, they fear that if they don't do or say something, they will stand on the bad guy's side. What I'm trying to say here is this suggestion, which is to say goodbye to pretending to be neutral. That really helps the society, because that's one of the root cause of the vicious cycle in this world. Another root cause of this vicious cycle that I'm seeing regarding the mainstream media is that they are reporting things in a very subtle, vague ways in order to manipulate. They don't show their information source, and also their information is very confusing because it's very vague, that you don't see the difference between conspiracy, fantasy, and all the storytelling and the actual facts. They make it vague so that they can manipulate people. So with everything I said in mind, I'm gonna suggest 3 things for media transparency. These 3 suggestions will be like on an ideal level, like it's not gonna happen but I wish it would kind of thing, and later I'm gonna talk about something realistic. So ideal suggestions, 3 things, and the first thing is clear labeling. Labeling is kind of a negative term, I know, but you know, the mainstream media should always make their political stance clear. You know, they can say whatever they want, like they could be simply the left or liberal or I hate Trump kind of thing. It's so confusing because they don't admit their political stance. And that's so weird though. Like, I am a proud conservative. Some people call me right-wing, but I'm a conservative, okay? It might be confusing seeing from other countries, but if you are from here, you can just tell that I'm a conservative and not a right-wing. So I'm a proud Japanese conservative, and also I'm a proud realist. You know, I don't only talk about ideals. I do have ideals, but I think about what we can do right now, you know, with the given circumstances and so on. And on my social media accounts, you can actually read that. For example, on Twitter, it says it right there that I'm a conservative and I'm a realist. And the media is supposed to be neutral. It's supposed to be like a filter of information, but we know that it's not true. And we're in the 21st century now, so why don't we just admit our political stance? Just as the word label says itself, you could put it on the screen like a sticker, like that. The mainstream media could just add that on their self-introduction and so on. Like, do you see the tendency here that I'm trying to show? That the mainstream media loves to label others. Like, Donald Trump is like this, like this is his label, blah, blah, blah. And then They label on Trump supporters as well, calling us all kinds of things. But they never label themselves. Like what? As if they are not part of this game. I'm like, you don't get to do that. That's not fair, you know? I'm like, why are you not proud of what you show to the world? Because we can see. It's no use hiding their political stance. Like, it's making it worse for everybody. So why don't they just admit their political stance? I bet that there will be the failure of their self-analysis. But that's where our discussions start. As I said earlier, what is this media that we're getting information from to begin with? And the second thing that I suggest is to have the media differentiate their opinions from the facts. As I said, the mainstream media mixes up their own opinions with facts. It's like all mingled, and that's why it's confusing. This is how they make their own fantasy, you know. But here's the thing. You cannot stop them from stating their own opinions. The mainstream media can and should have their opinions. It's okay. It's not like we have only one media source. We have lots of different media outlets. So what we need to encourage the media to do is to simply just separate the facts that they have with their opinions. And like, when they don't know something, they should say that, and they should never tell lies. I'm like, no more storytelling, you know, just bring me the facts. Because that's really what it is. Like, when I want information, I just want to get straight to the point, like what happened, how it happened, and blah blah blah. I don't need any like narrative, you know. I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I don't know like what you guys think. This is on an ideal level, so bear with me. But what I would like is the shift in their information delivery. Like right now, I'm just speaking to you, right? Like, this is like chatting, even though I must say that it's kind of like a presentation, but it's still like a chatting, right? Maybe media needs to follow the templates like in the court, for example. What we need is something more mechanical as for information. Oh, maybe that's how we go into AI generation. But in court, you know, everything is so mechanical that you have the templates of how to deliver things, right? And it works in court. And why not other places like in the media? The people add their emotions and opinions like too much into that. And I know that it's difficult treating information that it's like you don't see the range of freedom and so on. If we have like a templates of how to deliver our information, then there will be less misunderstandings and false information and so on. I mean, media is business, so it's not gonna be easy, but that's why we have politicians though. And the final thing that I suggest on the ideal level is the clarity of media body. I know I'm repeating myself here, but we need the transparency of the media people behind the scenes. I think that we should demand the transparency of everybody that's part of the publications that they're making. You know, everybody counts. Like, everybody has their own story and their own standpoint and their own dream and everything, and it's not a bad thing to expose that. Like, expose is a big, like, really strong word, but I believe that showing the body of the media will destroy both the angelic image and the devil image of the media, because we will know that they are only humans. Like, they were protected by the shield of the brand names, but if they just show themselves to the front, we will know that they are only humans. And then we can just make better judgments, you know? We can see their face, their name, their career, their statements on social media, their interaction with others, and we can make judgments by ourselves. Like, should we trust these people? Should we take them seriously? How about the thought patterns that they have? Before, in the mass media generation, it was them giving us information, but now we get information, but we at the same time we look at them, and it's like mutual. Before, it was the mass media brainwashing us, but today we get to think by ourselves and we can get information by ourselves, and that's the huge difference in this modern generation, I think. Some people might say like, oh, but that's dangerous, you know. It could be dangerous, you know, there are always extreme violent people, but if it's about the security then that's something that you have to talk to politicians about. If you can't even show yourselves to the citizens for bringing information, there must be like a huge problem that you have to solve. And the problems comes from like core values or common values, and it's about the understanding of freedom and unity of as a nation, and morality, education, that sort of things. And issues like that are something that politicians work on. If that kind of things are your problem, then that's something that you have to bring it up to politicians. But either way, we have learned all these years, like even from the long time ago, that the mainstream media doesn't work. There are problems regarding the mainstream media, and we cannot keep ignoring this. During the Trump administration, that's the best time that we demand things like this. All I'm saying in this video though can be summarized in one thing, which is that the mainstream media should be treated equally as the rest of the powers in our society. They just have too much power, you know? So these are my suggestions on an ideal level, but here's my realistic suggestion. I have two things. One, use the mainstream media. Two, swallow them. These two things actually mean the same thing, but you know, for example, we are very concerned about the expansionist policy of the Chinese Communist Party. It's not just for human rights and saving the people there, but for our national interests as well. It's really important for us to protect Tibet, Uyghurs, Southern Mongolia, Hong Kong, Taiwan, and all these places. So we are fighting with other Asians against China. The leftists in Japan, the core people are different, but those who like ordinary leftists in like the society, they hate all kinds of conflicts. That's why they don't want to arm ourselves. They are against all kinds of militaristic power, and they just hate conflicts. You know, they are in this peaceful fantasy world. And here's the interesting part. Even though leftists in Japan don't want to fight against China, they do see the victims in Tibet, Uyghurs, Southern Mongolia, and so on. So for that, even the mainstream media here actually report on that, because that's the human rights that they want to protect. So what's happening in Japan is that conservative people are fighting against China politically, and leftists in Japan, they don't mention anything about China because they don't want to get into conflicts with them, but they do see the victimhood here and they want to protect them, they want to rescue or save them. It's actually the mainstream media that report on those things more than our conservative media outlets. And when we have events with other Asians here in Japan, it's the leftist media that report that. And conservative media outlets, they don't show interest. But because leftist media actually cover our events, you know, it's working for us and it's working for them, and there's this win-win relationship here, and we are treating it like a business because it is. And because we have this win-win relationship here, we actually trust each other, which is something that normal conservative people could never understand, because normal conservatives here, they despise the left community, like all of them, because they don't think about the aims, they think about just friends or allies or some sort. Like they it's hard to explain this, but like they don't want to become friends with leftists. But people like my husband and I, we are realists, so we see the problems that we want to solve, then we will use whatever it takes to solve that problem. We just strategize everything, and there will be only like positive consequences, and that's why we can do it. So what I'm trying to say is that we just have to find the part where we can agree on and use that. And that's what I mean by use the mainstream media. The only thing that we need is the right narrative for them to use. So that's where you have to strategize. And also what I mean by swallowing the mainstream media is, I know the expression is kind of extreme, but I was actually watching this YouTube video on AOC. This guy was exposing who's behind the curtains of AOC. I was saying in my AOC video actually that we should, like, we know that she's a tool, and I was saying how I would like to see who's behind the scenes, like exactly what the guy did with the video. I'll link it below in case you're curious. There's this guy that wants to take over the Democratic Party, is what the video was about. Basically, the video was about how dangerous these people are. But when I look at the video, I just see their strategy and their ability to actually take action. That's awesome that you can now see who's behind the curtains and how they make it work and everything. Now you learned how they do it. So you can do it too. Just watch the video and you will understand what I'm talking about. As for the mainstream media, it's the same thing. The mainstream media is not there for people like us. However, if we raise our type of people, like, you know, educate the teenagers and so on, and send them to existing powerful mainstream media, and if we send like a ton of them, the mainstream media will change. It would take time and it will be a gradual shift, but it will work because it has worked with communists. That's how communists take over things. That's how Japan and the US got into war, because both of our countries were, you know, swallowed by communism. So it's really realistic enough, and people are doing that. You can see with AOC campaign as well. People do that. Just dive into your enemies and, you know, destroy from within. And I'm guessing that you can do it well with the media because they are business, as I keep repeating myself. The mainstream media wants numbers, they want career, they want status, they want money and connections, information source and everything, and you know what they want. So why don't you just give them but your type of things with the narrative that they would like? But in reality, you are winning. You know what I mean? They're not as powerful as people think. They're just people. It's just a team that consists of just a lot of members, but they're still people. I really love seeing how leftists are playing the game, you know? They make it happen. Somehow conservative people, like, I don't know about America. I know that there are a lot to learn from the American grassroots movements because that's something that we conservatives in Japan are failing. I just want you to understand that if I kind of criticize the conservative movements or whatsoever, I was thinking of like Japanese conservatives and I always get confused, you know. What I'm trying to say is that it's nice to learn from how leftists are doing, how our enemies are doing. Man, it's so dark outside now. So lastly, I'm gonna introduce two movies to you. These are both what I watched recently, and I'm pretty sure there are many better films that you can find, but I just watched these on Netflix. Do you hate Netflix? I don't know. I have this mentality that's workaholic. Recently I'm focusing on taking a break at night, and so I've been watching a lot of stuff. The first movie is Morning Glory. Did you just rhyme? I know the majority of you, like my audience, is actually male and you guys are interested in politics, so you might not really like this comedy slash drama slash romance movie, but it's all about perspective, you know. This movie is from 2010 and it stars Rachel McAdams and Harrison Ford. The main character is young and devoted morning television producer. Let me read this note here. The plot is that the main character, this young devoted morning television producer, she's hired as an executive producer on the long-running morning show which is currently failing, and she makes it work. So that's the storyline. So she's the producer. See, I got inspired by this movie to make this video. She's a producer of a morning show, so she wakes up really early, like midnight, and attend a meeting full of staffs. You know, I don't know if it actually happens every day in the morning. It should, right? I don't know how they deliver things, but I just saw everybody around the round table and all the director, producer, and everybody, including those who prepare food for the show and so on, early in the morning at the table, and they discuss what to do and what to prepare and so on. Just the visual alone gave me the realization, like, wow, that's something that we always have to keep in mind. That's the team that is creating the program, not the anchors alone. You know what I mean? So somebody is directing it, somebody is writing the script, somebody is preparing all this narrative. This movie, just in my opinion, gives you the sense of publication. It's more about drama than romance, so it's worth watching, I think, because this producer is really determined to make it work. It's just that somebody behind the scenes is making so much effort. That's kind of eye-opening for me, so that's why I wanted to share this movie. And another movie, this one I really recommend. So maybe you have seen it. It's called Special Correspondents. It's from 2016, so it's pretty recent, and it's comedy and satire. As a film, I don't know if you like it or not like it. I don't know if it's entertaining enough, but the satire is so funny. I watched this with my husband and he was laughing so hard. They depicted the mass mentality with dark humor, and also they depicted the possible thing that the media is doing right now. It's so good, man. So it's about two radio journalists, and they're supposed to go to another country because there are like terrorists and all this conflicts happening, and the radio company wanted to send them for information, you know, and broadcast live and so on. But on their way to their airport, they lose their passports and tickets. They escape to the building across their company and they hide there, and they fake their journalism there, making all the sound effects and so on, and to pretend to be in another country right now. And of course they don't have information, so they had to fake their kidnapping, just like what you see from the radicals in the Middle East. So I want you guys to watch this, so I'm not gonna spoil anything more, but my husband was watching this movie and he had to pause in the middle of that, saying like, oh, this is what? This is and he started to remember something and he had to check online. He wanted to check on facts. So my husband said in the middle of the movie that the movie reminds him of the War of the Wars. It's an episode from a radio series from a long time ago with it was directed and narrated by Orson Welles as an adaptation of H.G. Wells' novel. I'm pretty sure that you know this, but you know, they ran this radio program and it was based on a novel, and the plot was that the aliens were coming to colonize the earth or some sort. Even though it was fictional, it was on the radio, and because it sounded so realistic, people thought that it was actually happening and a lot of people got in panic. And that sort of things is depicted in the movie Special Correspondent. And it also showed how fake news spreads throughout the mainstream media. Basically, these two guys were faking information, right? But somebody else actually stole that storyline, saying that he knew it earlier but he didn't want to leak it because he thought that would be better for safety and so on, and he makes excuse like that, and he pretends that he knows this information even though these guys made it up. So that's like Russian collusion, you know? To summarize everything, I think that we have come to the point in history where we need to have the realization that the mass easily get agitated and they easily jump to conclusions, which means that we are lacking media literacy. We have known about media literacy, but this Russian collusion thing is a lesson for us all that we really needed. And another realization that we have to keep in mind is that the mainstream media only consists of humans. I don't know if it means good or bad, but they're just humans like you and I. Or am I even human, because I'm totally matching my wall? This is so weird. Sorry for the lighting. Why did I choose a white shirt? I don't know, because I don't have many shirts. You can send me clothes. Oh, that would be a good thing, man. So maybe we should start the movement of media transparency. I'm not a native English speaker, so I cannot come up with anything cool as in hashtag, but we should spread this notion of media transparency. So if you want to start a movement with me, or if you come up with anything cooler, let me know. If you want to talk to me or get in touch with me, the best way to approach me is actually Twitter. Technically, I could give you my email or messenger thing, but the thing is, I'm so Japanese that the greetings at the beginning and at the end and all the template and so on, it like it stressed me out. But on Twitter you can just directly jump into conversations, and that's why I reply a lot there. Anyway, I'm talking too much. Thank you so much for watching till the end. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up and also share with your friends and families and all the rich daddies out there, or rich mummies. I'm on Patreon, so if you can support me there, that would be great. And those who are already supporting me, thank you so much. Like always, like you have no idea how much you're helping. Thank you guys so much for watching. Have an amazing, fantastic day from me, okay? I will talk to you soon.